Hey folks, Curtis Stone here. Welcome back to our video series where we're exploring all the states and provinces of North America and looking at them through a homesteading context. Now, keep in mind, I keep having to say this, but it is worth repeating that I'm being super broad and I'm going to miss little details here and there. But that doesn't matter. I'm presenting some information broadly, and more importantly, what I'm trying to show you are patterns as to how I'm coming to some conclusions. Like when we look at geography, topography, there's patterns. There's patterns the way water moves down the mountain. You know, you have erosion up top and you have deposition down below. And so there's patterns in the way we put together information. So this is all broad. So don't take it personally if I misdescribed a tiny little area of a state or a province. It doesn't really matter. The fundamentals are what matters. And you can take as much from this as you choose to. Take what's good and leave the rest. And having said that, if you want to learn more about how I do these things and want to learn some tricks and tips with Google Earth, click on the link in the show notes. It'll take you to a webinar where I'm going to give you 3 tools and tricks you can use to use Google Earth and help to find land quickly and efficiently. Because when you're looking for a homestead property, it's a real drag. Like it takes a lot of time. I have friends and clients who have been searching for the right homestead for years. And there's a lot of psychology to that in some ways. But just on the time-saving end of it, if you have to travel from place to place and look at a homestead, it's a big deal. You know, today we're going to look at Illinois. But let's say you wanted to go to a part of the state that wasn't close to where you are previously. Maybe you're in Chicago and you have to go far south. You want to be close to Kentucky or something like that. That's a good drive to just go and look at a place. And so the more you can use these tools, and Google Earth is a great one that's free. The more you can use this stuff, the more time you can save yourself. And if you can save yourself 10 trips driving across the state or flying to another state, you just saved yourself a ton of money. And this tool will also help you by doing that, by eliminating those tricks. It's because you are finding threats and weak links first and then just getting them off the list. That's how you want to do this. You want to batch look at properties and just eliminate as quickly as you can so that you don't waste any more time, even computer time, looking at that property. That's why when I'm doing property assessments, the first thing I'm looking for are threats, because then it's just full stop. If there's a threat nearby, whether it's on the property or off the property or in a couple miles of the property, I eliminate it right out of the gate. Don't waste any more time on that. It's like toxic people. Just don't waste any more time on them. Just walk away, right? Toxic anything. And so that's the idea here, is that you want to look at a lot of properties, get the right information quickly, and then move on. So having said all that, let's jump into Illinois. I will say that it's one of my least favorite states in the U.S. I've traveled through there a lot. And Chicago is one of my least favorite cities in the U.S. I think it used to be when I was like into music and a bit of a hipster. But no, it's a rough place. And so I don't want to be anywhere near that. And so, St. Louis on the other end, even though, St. Louis is technically in Missouri, geographically, it's still right there. There's not a state border that's defended that keeps people from crossing it. People that live in these areas are going between St. Louis, Missouri, and Illinois all the time. And so people move freely in the U.S. That's one of the great things about the U.S. But as far as the state is concerned, that is 2 unfortunate places to avoid that are on the north and south end of the state. And so that eliminates a lot of area, but not entirely, because when you go further in south into Illinois, you start to get a little bit more rural down here, right? When you get to the southern part of Missouri and coming into Kentucky, there's a nice green area here, the Mark Twain National Forest. It's not this, but you have those geographical and flora patterns that exist. These treed rural areas. That's good. That's good stuff. The problem with much of Illinois, let me just kill these roads because they're just taking up a lot of eye traffic. The problem with Illinois in general, as far as a state is concerned, that is the same for, it's all about patterns, right? So what we're looking at here is peri-urban land. That's what we call peri-urban. When you classify land that's occupied by humans into 4 categories, it's usually, and there's some subcategories in there too for sure, but there's urban, suburban, peri-urban, and rural. And I prefer rural land because the way I like to say it is the more rural you are, the more closer you are to God's creation, which is nature. The more you're in the peri-urban, suburban, and urban, you're more into man's creation, concrete, government, money, all of these things. Not all necessarily bad. They just are what they are. And so I prefer to be in areas like this than I do areas like this. However, you have to be realistic about the way the world is and the things that you need to live, and that there is a case where you can be too rural. In that if you're too far out, every time you need materials, it's a big to-do. And unless your homestead is just a turnkey, hey, there you go, you walk in, everything you need there. You got greenhouses, root cellar, fields, ponds, power infrastructure, good roads, so on and so forth, fences. You're most likely going to have to build that. And really, to get the perfect homestead, you should build it from scratch. That's just a big undertaking. And sometimes if you can find a place that has most of the infrastructure, or at least the infrastructure in the right places, and the bones of what's needed, great. But sometimes you can't, and so then you got to just look at raw land. But that's a whole other conversation. But again, going back to Illinois, you just see these grid patterns, right? These are, I think they're quarter section. Let me just measure that to verify that. I think they're 160 acre sections, or these squares could be 160. Let's just see. Yeah, so these squares are the 160. So in most developed land, or I don't know if it's most by number, but yeah, there's your quarter section right there. So a full section is 600 and something. That's just how land was divided up. In Canada, it was under King John. Yeah, that's just how it is. And so when you see those patterns, you just see these grids of easy access roads, irrigation, water infrastructure for the farms, so on and so forth. I find generally I want to be away from that, because when you live in this stuff, like say you got your quarter section right here and you're living right here, you got a neighbor here, 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 you got a road on 4 sides, it's activity. Most crimes are crimes of opportunity. It's economic activity, which brings government. And as I have said many times, where the money flows, the policy goes. So the more closer you are to concentrated areas of government and concrete, essentially, which are kind of go hand in hand, you're going to be regulated more. You're going to be checked in on more, and so on and so forth. And so, but there's advantages, again, if you're in the right community. If all the farms around you are awesome and you're all on the same page, you can do it. I'm not saying don't ever go and look at peri-urban areas. I just prefer these areas because I'm a freedom guy. and I want to be closer to nature, number one. I want to be closer to God's creation. I also want to just have more freedom. I want to be able to do what I want more on my property, walk around and not see a building or somebody else. And it's just generally you're going to be more safe. You're away from the masses of people. And as it pertains to Illinois, man, there's just like some serious concentrations of population right here. Chicago's insane, right? This whole area of Chicago is just, I don't know, ghetto. Is that what you call it? I mean, every time I've gone through there, that's what it looks like. It's just It's a lot of people hanging around, a lot of slums, a lot of theft, a lot of crime. St. Louis too. And so, yeah, I want to be away from that stuff. But we can see there's areas of rural areas in Illinois. So let's now take a look at some of those good areas. And it's really, on the edge of the state, as far away. And again, you might find some cool spots, up here, Peoria, you might find some neat spots up here. It's possible. But still, it's just generally very peri-urban and just populated, a lot of traffic. And so you get into these corners up in the state or down below, you can see now we've got multiple water sources. We got water tributaries coming through. We got trees. This is a massive riparian area. And riparian areas are great. Yeah, there's opportunity in there. There's nature there. You can go mushroom picking in these forests. And so we've got privacy. We've got a little bit of topography. Where Illinois is pretty flat, but into these areas, we start to get into some hills. You can see a lot of elevation change. If you look down in the bottom corner of the screen, you can see, look at it right here, 300 meters off the sea level, getting down to the river, we're down to 182. So we're almost double the elevation. And so that's areas that have topography. Topography is great. Topography protects your flank. If you think about the way your homestead is situated, if you're thinking on, say, a prepper standpoint, is you want to have the least amount of open area to defend as possible, and that's what mountains provide. Mountains provide a protection from the flank. They make access difficult on one side. And you have to be careful of that because it's good to have access on different parts of your property, and the right topography can be accommodating for that. Just it can be a limiting factor in your search when you're thinking about it. So let's just see, do we have any of our outline properties? Yeah, here we got one in here. Let's take a look. So we've got, what do we got here? 90 acres on this puppy. So this is cool. We've got single access in. Oh, no, it's part of a road. That's okay. It goes around. And so maybe that's an easement. It's probably not. It's probably just the property line, which would make sense looking at this forest and stuff. But yeah, the road comes around. Wow, this is a pretty nice. Look at that driveway. That's a new blacktop. And so, you got a bit of privacy when they make this turn. The nice thing about being near turns, if you're going to be on a road, is when you're near a turn, people can't look because they're driving, unless you're driving a car that has autopilot or something, but which is quite common these days. But most people won't see, because if you're coming up to make this turn here, this tree is blocking you from looking in there, and then here, your field of view is out this way, so you don't even see anything. So you still have some element of privacy on there, which is cool. We got some fairly big fields in here. If you're going to buy a property like this, you most likely, I've said this for everything we've looked at, well, most things we've looked at in Missouri and Iowa and Nebraska, it's a similar situation because all these places are very peri-urban, is that if you're not going to farm that field, you need somebody else to, or you're going to do something with it. Maybe you're going to do a big silvopasture operation, or you're going to make something happen with it. But if you have big fields, this is just a sort of word of caution if you're looking at, rural or farm properties, is that if you're going to buy properties with plowed up fields like this, you need to do something with them, because if this soil just stays exposed and you're not putting new crops in, number one, you're eroding your soil by wind and rain constantly, but also you're just inviting weeds. And weeds are there to regenerate the soil, but they make it difficult to get in there after, because big weedy fields of thistle and big type of weedy crops are going to make it difficult to get in and plant, because they take up a lot of volume. They produce a lot of biomass, which is nature's way of healing itself, of course, but it still would make it difficult for you trying to get in there and do something. And so you just want to make sure that if you're not going to do something with those fields, lease them out to a farmer who is, and make sure they're used or done something with. And so that's the one thing on this property. But the cool thing about this place is that it's got lots of trees. And the trees that it has, for example, on the north side here, this could be a national forest or park or something like that, or it's private property. It's just not occupied. So in a way, you get the enjoyment of it, if not just the benefit of the buffer of less people around. And so, on a homestead like this, you got a ton of privacy, which is really good. And so, yeah, up in that area, you can see some action like that. Let's go down south, because I think that's what the other two I had. Yeah. And similar thing, right? We're just getting into these areas where there's water tributaries. Here, you're a little bit further away from the river. Up here, you're, right into this river valley. Is that the start of the Mississippi, actually? Yeah, that's the start of the Mississippi, isn't it? Yeah, because it all comes through here. Yeah, isn't that neat? But yeah, so up there you're start of the Mississippi, and then down here we're not. All rivers kind of go down towards the Gulf of Mexico, or a lot of them do in this area of the U.S. So this might feed into it eventually, but yeah, we're not so close off the big river, but we've got water. These are water systems here, lake. There's probably tons of groundwater here. Groundwater is amazing. If you the most ideal scenario on any homestead is that you've got multiple sources of water, and the more the merrier. I like to look at, when I'm looking at a property for somebody, I want at least 2 sources of water. So it could be a pond that just fills up with rain and snowmelt, seasonal rain and stuff like that. Maybe it's sometimes ponds are spring fed and they just kind of fill up and flow over. That would be one. Another would be a well. You've got maybe a pit well, a 20-foot well that might be part of this same chain of water, but it's not directly that. Or it could be a drilled well where you've got, a couple hundred feet down and you're into some aquifer or primary water source, and you're pulling from that. Maybe you've got some rainwater collection off all the buildings on the property. You might even just be tied into the municipal, county, or regional water service here. There's a variety of different water sources out there, but I always like to look for 2. So it's because one might fail. And so water is everything on a property. If you don't have water, you're dead, basically. And so 2 sources is good. Sure, you're hooked up to the water utility, and when you bought the place, it's all hooked up to that. So, okay, it works, great. But when you set up that homestead, start thinking about plan B. So how do we get our second source of water tied into our main water infrastructure? And that's not a difficult thing to do. You can have, let's say in the basement of this house, for example, you've got the water utility coming in from the county, and it goes to your pressure tanks, and then your pressure tanks distribute water to all your faucets and bathtubs and toilets and et cetera. All you have to do is tie another water source to that source from another pump. So now you could say, hey, let's tie the pond into that water source pressure tank, and then that can distribute into the infrastructure that exists everywhere on the farm. So water sources are a fairly easy thing to do. Winterizing it or making sure that it's can survive the winter is another thing. You might have to drill into the foundation of the house to keep that water pipeline below frost and stuff like that. Those are considerations, but yeah, 2 water sources is key. So this is a sweet homestead property. This is almost as good as you're going to get generally in a place like Illinois. You're way away from the population density. You've got forests on all sides of the property. You've got a complete private entrance, totally ideal. You've got this, you look at this and you just go, yeah, perfect building placement. Everything is where it should be. And then this pertains to the 11 scales of permanence, and the one that we don't talk a ton about because it's further down on the 11 scales of permanence, but it's the zones of use. So when you imagine sort of the concentric rings of the permaculture zones, if you're familiar with Bill Mollison's original work in the Permaculture Designer's Manual, the introduction book, he talks about these concentric rings, and they're not always concentric because they're going to form to your topography and your land, but they're concentric in how they Zone 1, the inner zone of your homestead. So what's going on here? Okay, house. Let's maybe consider taking down this tree and putting the kitchen garden right there. Perfect concentric application to zone 1. Maybe we want to put our egg layers right here, and now we can move them around on these fields. I just noticed we got some residential power lines coming through there. It's probably not the worst because they're small scale. They're not going to be, the EMF isn't going to be noticeable to you. But that's where we're thinking about that. And when you look at a homestead like this and the shop is over here, this is perfect because now you can, let's say this is your shop. You want this to be a post-harvesting area, or you want to add a post-harvesting area to this. You just put in a lean-to off the side of this building here, which is open to the field. Boom. So there's your market garden right there. Greenhouses along here. You can access so much infrastructure with a short walk away that this homestead is really, really ideal. And then if you're looking at, zone 3, even zone 4, that stuff back down here, but you've got good access to it, fields. You could easily make some better pathways if you wanted access that was, a bit higher off, that had good drainage around it so that you're not trudging through mud in the snow melt and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a fantastic homestead right there. Let's go and check out that was our 60 acres. Let's go check out our last 80 acres here. Oh yeah, this one's even more tucked away. This is definitely the most rural we've seen so far out of these. But yeah, look at that. Boom. Also really good zones of use, multiple sources of water, multiple ponds, tons of forest, tons of field, easy access in, easy driveway to maintain in the winter. Shop, house. That's a nice place for the house too, if that's the house. It looks like it is. Overlooking the pond, all the utilities here. So you go to work, you come here, boom, everything's there. Boom, 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 boom. Zone 1, 2, 3. It's all laid out. A property like this, you can really imagine those concentric rings in a real literal sense, because like I said, they don't always have to be circular, because your topography might not allow for that. But in this case, it really could. So you could say, here's your zone 1 around the house. And then we've got, with this layout, we've got kitchen garden here, herbs, fast producing vegetables that you put in your salads that you use fresh. You've got maybe a chicken coop right here. And the cool thing about putting a chicken coop there is that if you want to expand it, you just expand out into the fields. And so now we might say our zone 2 might look something like, maybe we're more in this zone. No, whoops. No, that's where the circle, don't, if you get too caught up in the circles, it doesn't serve you. So let's just say our zone 2 is kind of like this. Oops. Close this. Our zone 2 is kind of out here. And this might be your work site. So this is where you go to work. Okay? So that's your zone 2 if you're thinking about zones of use, Bill Mollison's permaculture and such. And then your zone 3 is out here. And so the homestead itself, the kitchen garden isn't a necessity when you're at work or doing your farmstead or your, small scale farm or whatever it is. And neither are the egg layers, but all the crops you're growing, right? The larger animals you might manage, you could have small flocks of animals on here. You could actually do some amount of cows on here. You could do pigs. You could do pastured or forest pigs, and you could do chicken tractors and stuff like that. An operation like this you could do a lot with. But like I said at the first one we looked at, is just be cognizant that if you've got this much field, be prepared to use it, be prepared to take responsibility for it. Because if you don't, it'll just become a mess and it'll be harder to manage and change going forward. So that's it for Illinois, folks. So yeah, you could, there's some nice places. There's some spots available. There is in every state. but perhaps your options are a little bit more limited based on the size. So yeah, if you guys found this helpful, smash the like, let me know where I should go next, and check out the playlists because we've done a lot of states so far. We're maybe halfway or more through all of these so far. So we've done a number so far. So check them out. We'll see you in the next one.